What I'm going to do is just go through 3 case studies around e-commerce. As Nathan said, over the last couple of years, what I've been really interested in is e-commerce and digital marketing, in particular, the role of the real world in e-commerce, hence the title here, Why Location is Still Everything. So what I did is I summarized the main findings from some of the research I've been doing over the last 5 or 6 years into a book called Location is Still Everything. And the sort of riff here is if you think about traditional retail, if Nathan and I open a store here in New Haven, is all about location, location, location. There's sort of good news and bad news. So the good news is if Nathan and I open a store selling New Zealand wine, is we know exactly where the customers are going to come from. They're going to come from close to where the store is. As we get further away from the store in concentric circles, the customer base will drop off. There's actually a formula for this, a retail gravity formula that I'll show you guys a little bit later on. So that's the good news, is we know where customers are. The bad news is the market is limited. And it seems to me, actually, that e-commerce is exactly the converse. The good news for Jet.com or Diapers.com or WarbyParker.com or Bonobos or Harry's or whomever is that the market is essentially unlimited. The bad news is, how the heck does anyone ever find out who you are and how to actually subscribe to you? So I won't talk about this directly, but more and more we're seeing companies doing very, very innovative things around early customer acquisition. So company Jet.com. Has anyone heard of Jet.com? Okay, a few of you, started by a fellow from New Jersey, Mark Law, who was in our San Francisco MBA program. Previously, he founded Diapers.com, which I'll talk about today, and a whole series of companies that he sold to Amazon for $545 million back in 2011. And so what's interesting about Jet.com is Jet.com acquired 400,000 customers before they even launched. And how did they do this? Well, what they did was they hung out a carrot. And one thing I've learned from studying e-commerce, if you put out the right carrot, people may literally go insane, okay? So Diapers.com, the referral rate for that business was about 8%. So a colleague and I, we looked at the first 100,000 customers that Diapers.com acquired, and the setup was such that if I refer Dan, and Dan becomes a customer, I get a $1 credit towards buying new diapers. Now, about 8,000 people participated in that, and those 8,000 people generated about 4 customers each, 32,000. So we tend to think a lot about the mean and a lot about the variance. But one thing I'd never really thought about was the extreme. And the internet really is the world of extremes. We found that the top 100 customers generated 15,000 referrals, about 150 each. So maybe some fellow like Nathan has triplets and decides, I'm never going to pay for diapers. I'm going to print out these coupons and put them on every car I can find in New Haven, and whomever signs up, then I get a $1 credit. So Mark saw this and he applied it to the nth degree with Jet. Do you know what the #1 referrer of Jet.com got in return? Got 100,000 shares in the company. And I actually met this fellow 3 weeks ago in Philadelphia. And so I was joking with some of my students. I was on sabbatical in India. I said, I should just give up my job at Wharton for a few weeks or a few months and just go around the US signing up people for Jet.com to get those 100,000 shares. Well, some other fellow who was a bit more sophisticated, he took that to heart. He hired a loyalty company called Swagbucks. He paid them $18,000 to build him a Eric-specific loyalty program, and he generated 8,000 new customers. Okay, it's a little bit tangential, but in customer acquisition, the internet is the world of extremes, and putting out the right carrot is really important. So the twist here on location is the following. The customers now exist everywhere. We have this unlimited market, but it's not the location of the store that Nathan and I own anymore. What it is it's the location of the customer relative to their physical circumstances and relative to other customers. Because if I know where you live in the US, I know 3 things about you. I know quite a lot about your demographics, your age, income, occupation, financial status, etc. Because of homophily, birds of a feather flock together. People who live in the same neighborhood, on average, are more similar demographically than people from different locations. Secondly, I know quite a lot about your psychographics and your preferences. And then thirdly, if I know where you live, I know what your offline options are. And your offline options dictate your proclivity for e-commerce. So if Dan and Nathan and Dan, I need some more coffee. Nathan and Dan both have young kids, but Dan lives in Manhattan and Nathan lives way out in the suburbs in New Haven. They could both get the same terms of trade from Diapers.com. The world is flat in terms of the offer. The same price, the same assortment, the same delivery time, but demand is never flat in e-commerce because Dan, who's living next to Dwayne Reed in Manhattan, he has 24-hour access to diapers at good prices. He needs the internet a lot less than Nathan, who's 30 minutes from a supermarket. So it's the location of the customer relative to the offline option that becomes important. So I'm going to elaborate this idea by going through 3 case studies, Diapers.com that I just mentioned, Crate&Barrel, and then Warby Parker, and we have some colleagues from Warby Parker in the audience. So let me start with Diapers.com. As I just mentioned, diapers.com was part of a suite of companies. You can see them all, the diapers, soap, wag, etc., etc. And a little bit of background on the company. This is one of their warehouses out in Goldsboro, Western Pennsylvania. They were processing about 18,000 orders a day. Super large thing, 1.25 million, 2 million square feet. And that suite of companies was acquired by Amazon for $545 million back in 2011. Now, if you think about this historically, and I put there's an NPR interview you can get from this. It's really interesting. It talks about the inception of the company. And when Mark and Vinny started this company in New Jersey, their wives essentially gave them 1 year to try this completely crazy, stupid idea, selling diapers online. And the company used to be called 1-800-diapers.com. And you know what Mark and Vinny used to do? They used to go to Costco in Jersey and literally buy all the diapers. And in the NPR interview, it's really hilarious because Vinny, his full name is Vineet Bara, came originally from India, his family did. So he's imitating his father, a man with a very thick Indian accent, buying 50 grand worth of diapers on a credit card, you know. So you ask, well, how did they go from that in 05, 06 to this in 2011? Well, obviously they had a great value proposition, but those things I mentioned about customer acquisition were very important. The other thing that comes into play in e-commerce, the best source of new customers are the existing customers. If the average customer at diapers.com referred at a rate of 8%, a customer like Dan who comes in through referral, he then refers at a rate of 16%. Okay? So referral has both a treatment and a selection effect. A treatment effect means if he got referred, that he's just more likely to do it himself. A selection effect, if I pick out a customer like Erin Collins, because I know Erin and she's got 3 kids, I'm just better able to find her as a customer than Mark or Vinny, the CEOs. Okay? All right, so I'm going to show case study on these guys. Then I'll get into Crate&Barrel. Everybody knows Crate&Barrel and these other stores, right? So this case study is going to be about something called buy online, pick up in store, sort of the interface between online and offline. And then the third case study I'm going to do is going to be about a company called Warby Parker. Who here has heard of Warby Parker? Oh, that's great. All right, who's wearing any Warby Parker? Okay, good. Anyone else bought any Warby Parker? Okay, fantastic. All right, so we'll come to that. This was started by 4 students at the Wharton School in the MBA program back in February 2010. All right. So here's, and this is just a little bit of info about Warby Parker. They've sold over 1 million pairs. They were recently named the #1 brand. Number 2 is Apple, okay? Now that might seem like a little bit of hyperbole, but I think the reason that Warby Parker got that designation by Fast Company is Warby Parker has now entered into the vernacular as a verb. To Warby Parker something means to take a category where the customer pays this and the cost is this, there's a massive margin, and somebody like Gillette owns that for razors, or somebody like Luxottica owns that for eyewear, and then you build a digital brand online and you disrupt it. So just yesterday I bought a bed from a company called Casper.com. Thing showed up in my apartment, I unwrapped it, because a mattress is something where you pay this and it costs this, and it's a terrible experience, but Casper.com kind of solves that problem. So I think, Erin could probably speak in Divya better, but I think that's why they got the designation, because this has now become sort of a business model to disrupt these high margin industries. Anyone know who that fellow is on the left? Guy with the good hair? Any guess? Isaac Newton, very good. What about the fellow on the right? Okay, that's William J. Riley. He was a prof at UCLA. He invented the idea of retail gravity. The only reason I'm showing this is, I get in trouble if I come somewhere from Wharton. If Eric Bradlow finds out I didn't show at least one formula, it's bad for our brand, okay? But that formula on the right basically is computing the indifference point between 2 places where you could go to shop. It's a very simple idea. It says if you've got 2 towns, town A and there's 100,000 people, and town B and there's 250,000 people, which of those 2 towns would you rather shop in? Well, you'd rather shop in the place that's bigger. Everything else equal, New York City has more variety than New Haven. However, that's not the only consideration. You also need to consider the distance between the 2. And if the distance between the 2 is 75 kilometers, I apologize, I'm still not a citizen. I still think in metric, okay? Your indifference point is not at 37.5 kilometers at the midpoint. The indifference point's more like 46 to go to the bigger town and 29 to go to the smaller one, because you'll trade off more distance for more variety. So this was sort of the metaphor that I ended up using in the book, and I'm going to take you through these 3 case studies, this idea of gravity. Gravity says make things big, i.e. commercially attractive, and bring them close. Eliminate all the frictions in the buying process, okay? And gravity is also the acronym, geography, resistance, etc., that I use in the book. And if you think about that resistance, eliminating frictions, there are companies like TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor is worth $10 billion. And all it does is eliminate part of the friction in the buying process for choosing a hotel or a restaurant. ZocDoc is $1.5 billion because it helps you find a doctor. Okay, so anything you can do to remove friction is going to be very valuable. Okay, let's rattle through these case studies. Here's diapers.com. I just put the link to Jet. If you're interested in looking at Jet, the goal of Jet is to beat Amazon on price and logistics, okay? And basically to be the Costco of the internet. So everything they sell you, they'll make zero money on, but they'll charge you a membership fee and they'll be cheaper and more logistically efficient than Amazon. That's kind of the idea. Okay, so here's the case study for diapers.com. What I'm showing you guys here are some maps of the US. And what you can notice is these areas that are dark, I'll go back, are areas that have had at least one customer. So think of this as blah, blah, blah.com. Okay, I won't say which company this is, but this is a company selling stuff over the internet. What you notice as time rolls on, you get more and more dark areas. So demand is spreading over time and over location in a very, very different way than Nathan and I having a little store where demand is very concentrated by the retail gravity formula. So you might ask yourself the question, well, in month 43, if we got 10,000 new customers, where would they show up? Would they just be randomly scattershot throughout the US, or would there be some special structure? So any guess as to whether it's random or special structure? I'm really good at asking these leading questions. Okay. All right, if you said special structure, you were right on the money. Okay. So here's the east and the west coast, and what you see is that demand is more likely to show up in locations that are contiguous with locations of existing demand. So that says if you're an e-commerce company, certainly for the initial life of the business, you should pile on in locations that you're already successful. And why is that? Well, that's the principle of adjacency that I elaborate on more detail in the book. And it says there's two things going on here. The reason why you get more demand in contiguous locations is that if I'm Nathan's neighbor and he's using diapers.com because his offline alternative is lousy, well, I'm co-located with him, I got the same problem. And we're demographically similar, and we have similar preferences, and we have similar options. Therefore, homophily dictates if you've got one, you should be able to get two. Okay? And then the second thing that this picture is supposed to represent is that people might actually communicate with each other, and/or there's some kind of social observation. So I'm wearing a pair of pants made by Bonobos. Anyone know Bonobos? So I happen to like the guy that runs the company. So when I got the box, I didn't put the box in the trash. I put the box next to the elevator in my building, hoping that some other joker would see it and go to bonobos.com and buy some stuff. So social observation is also very important. So if you were warbyparker.com and you could encourage people to ship the product to their home or to their office, or Birchbox selling makeup, you might try and get them to ship it to the office, because then, when Lindsay opens up all that makeup, then all her friends see it, and there's kind of a social conversation takes place. Okay, so that's the first case study. Excuse me. The second one's Crate&Barrel. And this was a paper that was published by a couple of colleagues of mine in management science, and it looked at this idea of buy online, pick up in store. Okay? It was a natural experiment, and there were two groups, as they are in every experiment, a treatment group and a control group. If you're in the treatment group, and we'll make this the group over here, this is Erin's group. If you're in Erin's group, you can go to crate&barrel.com, and you'll see all the prices of everything that they're selling, and you'll also see all the inventory. Transparent price, transparent inventory. You see that they're selling Nespresso coffee machines for $500, and they got 3 in stock at a store that's close to your home, okay? Now over here in Dan's group, that option is not switched on. Dan is in the control group. In the control group, there's no store to which Dan could go and then pick up a product, okay? So that's the only difference. Here there's full transparency and the option, there's not. And the reason why Crate&Barrel did this at crate&barrel.com is, like a lot of you perhaps in the audience that you're working with these companies or thinking about these issues, a lot of times the blah, blah, blah.com of a traditional retailer is not performing very well. And they thought by switching on this option of buy online, pick up in store, sales at crate&barrel.com should go up in the treatment groups compared to the control group. That was the thesis of the senior executives. Seems reasonable. However, when the experiment was run, what happened was sales in the location where you turned on that option and you showed transparency, so now Erin can see the coffee machines there, it's $500, there's 3 in stock, I can go get it. Online sales at crate&barrel.com go down, okay? That looks bad. Cart abandonment goes up. So she put it in the cart, she thought about doing it, but she didn't pull the trigger. Well, what's going on here? Well, it turns out that sales of that coffee machine in the store, however, around those locations went up 6%, because what's going on here is most of what Crate&Barrel sells has tactile elements. What Rajiv Lal and Miklos Savary, two professors who published a paper in Marketing Science in 1999, would call non-digital attributes. That's why Jeff Bezos started with books, right? If I buy Dan's book online, everything about his book can be perfectly communicated through the medium of the internet. It only has digital attributes. The price, the length of the book. I buy his book. It's not going to come written by somebody else. It's not going to be a romance novel as opposed to a decision-making book, right? Everything can be perfectly communicated. For a pair of pants or eyewear, that's not the case. They have non-digital attributes. So trying to reduce customers' uncertainty about non-digital attributes ends up being very critical. So these people come into the store. Not only do they come into the store and buy coffee machines, traffic goes up 13%. And again, to keep my slides kind of nice, I couldn't fit another number, across the side there. Sales of unrelated items, like mattresses, go up 5%. So buy online, pick up in store became known then as ROPO, research online, purchase offline. Okay, so that's kind of the key idea here, is that by providing transparency about some attributes that are suited to the online medium, you can actually drive traffic into the offline store. Okay, now I'll do the third case study. And this point that we're making here is illustrating this whole point of resistance, eliminating frictions in the buying process. And I'll just maybe ask you guys, what was the other sort of really interesting thing that Bezos did that no one had ever done when he started Amazon? So not only did he start with a product that only had digital attributes, and by the way, books were only ranked 25th in catalog sales when he started with books. Like in 1994, I might have said, well, the internet's like a big electronic catalog. Let me look at the #1 catalog product and throw it online. But he was a lot smarter than that, because the #1 catalog product was apparel. And that wouldn't have worked as well on the internet back then. So what was the other thing that Bezos did that was kind of radical? Operated as a loss? I think he's still doing that. That seems to be a winning business strategy. Well, the other thing he did is he allowed people to review Dan's book. And that was really radical. And I'll give you a great quote from a book I read called The Everything Store that talks about the history of Amazon. So these executives in the publishing industry came to Bezos and said, what's wrong with you? Are you crazy? Are you some kind of idiot? Don't let people review Dan's book. What if it gets a bad review? Sales will go down. And that's true. Like Dina Maislin, who was here at the Yale School of Management, she showed good reviews drive up sales, bad reviews drive down sales, and bad reviews slow down subsequent good reviews. Like you're about to go and write a good review, give it a 5, and you see a 1, and you scratch your head and say, well, maybe I shouldn't. So reviews have incredible power. But you know what his response was when they said, your job is to sell books? He said, no, you don't understand. I don't make money when I sell books. Seems odd for a bookseller. I make money when I help customers make better decisions. I think that's actually a very deep insight. I make money when I help customers make better decisions. And if you think about everything from Yelp to TripAdvisor to ZocDoc, why are they worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars? Because they help customers make better decisions. Okay, in the last 3 minutes, I'll blast through the last case study. Okay, Warby Parker, we have some customers here. So this is you guys, this is basically a business that's changing the market for eyewear. When Warby Parker started, only about 2% of the category was sold online. And the notion was to take a product that many of you in the room might have paid $400 or $500 for, if it's Dolce, if it's Armani, if it's Tiffany's, if it's Bulgari, and basically sell you the same thing with a prescription in for $95. Now, Warby Parker initially had 2 channels. So channel number 1, 5 minutes, okay. Channel number 1, you could go online and you could buy a pair of glasses. And to help you do that, you could upload a picture of your face. Okay, this is just a stock photo. I used to have a picture of my colleague, Santiago, that I'm working on this paper with. His wife approved a picture for public display, but somehow it got replaced by the stock picture. So you could upload a picture of your face and do virtual try-on. Did anyone here in the room buy any Warby Parkers doing that? Okay, good. Sorry, what's your name, mate? Jeremy. Jeremy, yeah, thanks. Oh, cool, yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Good. So Jeremy did this, all right, because I'm going to come back to Jeremy. And then the second thing you could do is you could get 5 frames shipped to your home for 5 days for free, because the founders of the company realize eyewear has what kind of attributes? Non-digital attributes, right? People want to touch, feel, and try, so you get 5 frames for free for 5 days. Anyone here in the room do that? Bingo. What's your name, please? Linda. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got Jeremy and Linda. And then at a certain point, Warby Parker decided to then add these things, physical stores, okay? And also showrooms. Now, what I'm going to show you today is based on some research we're doing for management science that's using a showroom. This is actually the flagship store down in Manhattan. It's a much nicer picture. But the idea here is across all 3 channels, Okay, well, Jeremy did straight online. Linda did try 5. Anyone go into a Warby Parker store and buy a pair of glasses or go into a showroom? Okay, sorry, what's your name again, please? Subroto, okay, good. All right, this is working out perfectly. Okay, so Subroto went into a showroom. So the question that Warby Parker had is, if you add a third channel in a location where you previously only had 2, what happens to demand? Okay, so let's imagine that everyone on this half of the room, okay, on Ravi's half of the room has 2 options. They can either buy online or they can do a try-on. And then over on this half of the room where Nathan is, we switch on a third option, which is a showroom. Okay? Now, again, this is a natural experiment, but of course, just more of an academic point here, showrooms are not opened randomly. In an experiment, you like to assign treatment and control at random, but of course, the team at Warby is opening stores and showrooms in locations where they think they're going to do well. So you have to adjust that out of the analysis using something called propensity matching, so that the locations that didn't get the showroom and those that did are apples to apples. And then when you do the comparison, what do you find? Well, when you open up a showroom, demand goes up 9% relative to a matched location that has no showroom. You might say, well, that's somewhat obvious because we used to have a channel that didn't exist and we open it, we get some positive demand through it. What's more interesting is that web sales in locations that have physical showrooms, online sales go up as well. Now, I don't know what the mechanism is. Maybe Nathan wandered into a showroom, happened to see Warby Parker, or maybe you go to the website of blah-blah-blah.com and you see that they have real stores. You might have more confidence that they're a legitimate business. And I thought of that because a friend of mine who's an attorney sent me this really funny link where it shows all these like law firms like, you know, Goldstein and Bell LLP, and it looks a beautiful website, and then there's a picture of the actual office, which is like a garage somewhere in Jersey, okay? So it could be either of those things. However, sales through that home try-on channel go down 5%. This looks like bad news. When you open a store, you're selling less through the home try-on channel. However, the home try-on channel is not just about sales, it's about how many boxes did you send out to begin with. And the number of boxes that you send out goes down even more. So if orders go down 8% and sales go down only 5%, that implicitly means that conversion goes up. Okay? And what's the mechanism here? Well, the person who doesn't really need the tactile experience, like Jeremy, he goes straight to the website. The person like Linda, who's quite comfortable with buying online, buying in the try-on, she does that. But Subroto, who previously would have had to do the home try-on, but he might have wanted to do 3 or 4. It's not enough for him. He gets siphoned off into the showroom, therefore leaving those people in the try-on better matched to that channel and therefore converting at a higher rate. Okay, I've got 1 minute, perfect. And then there's 2 other pieces of information that we find. Not only does this improve marketing, but it improves the operational efficiency of the company. That once you open these offline showrooms, the fewer people doing this multiple try-on, which costs a lot of money every time you send out the box, and also returns go down as well. So what we think happens when you open up this third channel that's providing information is that it's allowing customers to more efficiently sort. And the sort of big takeaway that we put in a Sloan management paper last year is if you're a vertical brand, your biggest challenge in the distribution channel is getting out information about what you're selling and what it looks like and how it feels. If you're somebody like Amazon who's selling other people's stuff, well, they're already providing the information. Amazon should be focusing on logistics and getting stuff to you faster and cheaper because what they're selling is kind of standard. So we think vertical brands will do more and more of this kind of pop-up and showrooming, and those other brands that are resellers, they'll be focusing more on logistics. Okay, I think I'm right out of time. So thank you so much. All right. Oh, yeah, sure. Does anyone have a question? Oh, sorry, please, yes.
I was curious. Oh, I'm sorry. I was curious. You mentioned Jet is going to outdo Amazon in logistics?
Yes.
Please tell us the secret sauce there.
Okay. So as I understand, great question. So Jet is going to outdo Amazon on logistics. This is the claim. So apparently, let's say I buy 2 things, like a bat and a ball. What Jet might do is suggest if you add a glove, I'm going to reduce the price of the whole 3, and I'm going to bundle it. Or I might buy 2 things from P&G, and they might say, well, add a 3rd and a 4th, we'll lower the price. Wait 2 more days, we'll lower the price even more. And the way I heard the CEO explain it is he said, sometimes Amazon sends you an order in 4 or 5 different boxes. He has some mechanism for consolidating that. And why I think the guy has a shot is that Diapers.com and Amazon and those other, Diapers and soap and those other businesses were basically logistics operations. I mean, they were they had about 40 different box sizes that they would use to pack things appropriately, get them in the truck, save about 2 or 3 points on margin. So that's kind of the play. And it's different to Amazon Prime, right? Because Amazon Prime, they might actually lose money on that, because if I've already paid my buffet, I just keep eating. And I might eat in a way that's inefficient. I might order like a couple of toothbrushes, and that hurts Amazon. But Jet's model is, let me take your $50, and then everything I sell you, expected profit is zero, taking shipping and pricing into account. But there's some really cool articles being written about it. Obviously, it's a huge gamble. The analogy Mark gave was, he said, there was a company called Walmart came along, was the low price leader. Then Costco came later, 20 years later. They were even cheaper, but you had to drive and they charged you a fee. He said, interestingly enough, 20 years ago, Amazon started, and now Jet's starting 20 years later. We're kind of the Costco of the internet. So, all right, great question. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay.